Good afternoon, everyone. We can start the slides. My presentation today is going to talk about wearables and health data, privacy versus proactivity. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. So when we're thinking about health, So when we're thinking about health data, first of all, we know that the World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of infirmity or disease. When it comes to data, we're looking at any type of raw information, whether quantitative or qualitative, that can be analyzed to make decisions. So this information is typically gathered by observations, measurements, research, or analysis. Looking at some more official definitions, the Information Commissioner's Office defines data concerning health as personal data relating to physical or mental health of an individual, including the provision of healthcare services, which reveals information about their health status. When it comes to Health Data Research UK, they define it as data related to a person's health, their health conditions, information related to maternity, children, cause of death, and even quality of life. So it can even extend to patient health records, studies about the health of groups of people, data from blood or tissue samples, imaging data, and data from health and fitness devices. Now, when it comes to wearables, I'm wearing a wearable here. This is the Oura Ring. It tracks different things such as temperature, heart rate variability, which is fluctuations in your daily heart rate. It tracks things like your sleep cycle, including the different stages of sleep, such as deep sleep and rapid eye movement, so that you can stay informed about your health and changes in your health. But wearable technology more broadly can be defined as a device or technology that is worn on the body, typically equipped with sensors, computing capabilities, and connectivity features that enable it to both collect and transmit data, perform different functions, and interact with the user and other devices. Now, as we think about we can go to the next slide now, thank you. As we think about some of the benefits of wearables, they actually offer a lot of proactive insights that can transform workplace health. So they can help detect early signs of fatigue, stress, or dehydration in high-risk roles. They can enhance safety by tracking movement, PPE use, and exposure to heat or pollutants or other environmental concerns. And they can also support just broader health and well-being strategies by revealing patterns in absenteeism, stress, and recovery. Now, these benefits have begun to be explored in the EHS sector, but scaling them ethically is a challenge, and even overall uptake is a challenge, which we will go on to discuss. Now, when we think about wearables specific to EHS and occupational safety, I would say that smart textiles are particularly relevant in high-risk sectors such as construction, mining, manufacturing, and emergency response. So as mentioned, things like heat stress detection with temperature-sensitive fibers embedded in the shirts or vests, respiratory monitoring through chest bands with embedded stretch sensors. You can have fatigue and workload monitoring through integrated ECG sensors in base layers. So, this is about wearables that are actually embedded into clothing as opposed to an independent device that you would wear, such as an Apple Watch or a Fitbit. Thank you. Move on to, So, when we're thinking through the privacy dilemma from insight to oversight, consent and transparency is one factor to consider. So for organizations that are using wearables, are workers truly informed about what is being tracked and why? It's one thing for them to be using wearables and know they're being tracked, but do they truly understand every single domain about their health and well-being that is being tracked? Informed consent, did they have the opportunity to fully understand all of the benefits and disadvantages and to be able to accept, or was this something that was just assumed where they were kind of forced to participate? The issue of data rights and ownership is also really important when it comes to the issue of data, because who owns this data? Ultimately, it is your data that's being collected, but who owns it? Would it be the employer? Would it be the vendor? Would it be the actual worker? These are some of the ethical considerations that need to be explored. Also, can workers actually access their data? Can they correct their data? Can they delete their own data? What happens when there's an error in data? So these are also some of the ethical considerations that need to be explored. When it comes to security and risk, we obviously know that data breaches happen. There are hackers always trying to access different data points. So is it really worth collecting this data with the risk of data breaches and thinking about the potential of exposure to sensitive health information? If somebody has a long-term health condition, you know, the fact that someone could get access to that data is something that needs to be considered. And obviously cultural and legal gaps. So there are varying levels of trust in digital systems, which is what the research currently shows. And there can also be limited enforcement of data protection, depending on the region that you're operating in. We can go to the next slide. So in order to balance this risk and reward, we really need to look at things like ethical deployment, policy alignment, inclusive design, and local partnerships. For the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next slide, where we're going to look at a case study. This was a study that was conducted to look at assessment and adoption of wearable technologies for health and safety management across construction professionals in Nigeria. So the focus was on the construction industry in Lagos State and Abuja, specifically because construction sites are very high-risk environments, and wearable technologies such as smartwatches or sensor-equipped helmets can offer proactive safety benefits. However, uptake is often limited due to cost, infrastructure, cultural resistance, and privacy concerns. So this was a quantitative survey. They asked 108 professionals, which consisted of government agencies, consultancy firms, and grade D contracting firms. It was an electronic questionnaire, and they used statistical analysis to compare the awareness and adoption across the different employer types. So what was found was that there was actually high awareness of different wearables, including things like smartwatches and wearable cameras. But when it came to things like fitness trackers, smart eyewear, or sensor-equipped vests and helmets, there was a slightly less awareness. And then when it came to dust sensors, rain sensors, and sensor-equipped footwear, there was even lower awareness, with overall government agencies showed the highest level of awareness, followed by consultants, then contractors. But there was no device type that had strong awareness across all groups. So overall adoption, when it comes to organizations that were actually using these technologies, it was very low across all wearable types, which were 11 different types. Most used were smartwatches and fitness trackers, although it was extremely rare. And the least used were things that are more particular to EHS, such as dust sensors, rain sensors, and footwear sensors. And out of all the groups of professionals, it was contractors that were most lagging in adoption. So they were kind of using these things the least. And no device was actually rated as used often or always. So some things to take from this is, while the study is quantitative, it references barriers from related literature to uptake, which includes cost constraints, especially for smaller organizations. privacy concerns, which we discussed earlier. So wearables, while they are supposed to be used for workplace safety and well-being, may capture data that is deemed to be confidential and personal, leading to reluctance of employees to engage. There are also some infrastructural and policy gaps, so limited regulatory support and unclear data governance, which may also erode employee trust. And then lastly, just cultural resistance. So workers may perceive them as sort of surveillance devices. Some of the limitations of the study included was obviously in Nigeria, so it may not reflect national trends or trends across the entire continent. And it was professionals only. It wasn't looking at frontline workers. But what's interesting is that research from more recently in the last 2 years shows similar trends. So people are very much aware of these technologies in EHS, but adoption is low. And now the focus of researchers is to look at behavioral change strategies to try and persuade organizations to uptake these technologies. So what does that mean for us? What does that mean for you? What does it mean for EHS professionals in general? It's all about balancing safety, innovation with ethical data practices. Defining what data is collected, how it's used, and who can access it. Ensuring informed voluntary consent from your workers. Collecting only safety relevant data, not over collecting data. And always anonymizing or aggregating data whenever possible. Clearly defining who owns the data and restrict access to sensitive metrics. Have appropriate security measures in place, such as data encryption, secure transmission and storage, and conduct regular audits of access and sharing practices. Also, transparency and feedback. Give workers access to their own data and share how insights have led to safety improvements. These are the things that can be implemented to help with adoption. There's so much potential for wearables to help enhance workplace safety and well-being. And there are so many innovations particular to clothing, which is, as mentioned, smart textiles or intelligent textiles. So let's try not to be in the category of professionals who are aware but are not doing anything about it. Let's look at how we can begin to implement these technologies in our workplace where it would make sense with the appropriate data governance. And, you know, if committees need to be formed, these things need to be done, because data governance is a very tricky area. There's a lot of legal considerations. So even in the UK where I'm based, there are ongoing conversations around data governance for health, because obviously health data should be used to improve lives, but it shouldn't harm anyone in the process. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yvonne Adebola. Can we do it better? Thank you so much for showing us how wearables and safety gadgets and all that can transform